We spent about £9,000 and generated about £63,000 of new revenue, which gives us in and around a 6 times return on the spend. The calls have been very good. A lot of them are exactly our ICP. On average, over the last 6 months, we closed something like 40% of the calls that we book.
Why do you think we have such a high conversion rate?
I think it all comes back to the approach that we take, trying to build demand rather than generate leads. I could probably, for the same marketing spend, get more meetings in the calendar and generate more leads, but it may not lead to more revenue overall. This is where you really have to think of your marketing and growth as a business person and not as a marketing person.
Hello, David.
Hello.
It's great to have you back on another episode of Building in Public. Your background looks different. Where are you today?
Yeah, I'm in a different location at the moment. We're spending a couple of weeks in the Alps in France.
Amazing.
Doing some snowboarding, which is awesome. Amazing. So I've actually got underneath here, I've got my my snowboarding gear on. After this, I'm going to go straight out.
Amazing. How have you been managing your schedule whilst you snowboarding and working?
A great question, which I'd love to answer. I've basically been snowboarding all morning, and then I've been taking calls in the afternoon. So it's been quite intense because sometimes I've had like 6 hours of back-to-back calls in the afternoon. But it's just amazing. I mean, what's not to love about that lifestyle? Let's
just do a quick recap of where we are today.
Absolutely. So we wanted to make 30 new sales in the first quarter of 2025, which is roughly double what we'd expect in a typical quarter. So over the last year, we've had our marketing system has been working really, really well, which is fortunate because that's obviously what we help other people with as well. And we've been set at a certain level. We haven't wanted to really ramp up due to wanting to have the infrastructure in place to be able to deliver for more customers as and when we brought them on board. And towards the end of last year, we made some really significant progress in terms of our delivery and our infrastructure and made some great hires. And so we're now ready to kind of ramp up and work with more companies, which is exciting. And the beauty of the way that we do our marketing is that we're basically able to just increase our spend on marketing. And in theory, we hope to see roughly equal returns for that spend. So that's the experiment. And as we're building in public, we wanted to be very public about how we're approaching it, which I think is quite unique because we're talking about what we're doing before we're doing it rather than after we've done it. So the plan is to have 30 new sales for the quarter, roughly double what we would expect in a typical quarter. And in order to do that, we need to roughly double our marketing spend. So that's the plan. And we're recording this as of 12th of February, so we're kind of almost halfway through now, and we can bring people along for a little update.
Amazing. I'm going to just take you back to something you said there, that you feel now that we have the infrastructure in place, so we're ready to scale, and we didn't do it, say, 6 months ago because we weren't ready to bring on 30 new clients. Can you talk a little bit about the team structure, or what you mean by that infrastructure that you believe is now ready?
Yeah, I mean, what you really don't want to do is... So let me answer this question a little bit of a different way.
Okay.
I'm like a growth and marketing person. In all of the businesses that I've been a part of, customer acquisition has never been a problem. Like that's really my skill set. I find it very easy to win new business. But a lot of business people who are watching this know, like that's the first problem that you solve in a company. And then after you've solved that, you need a way of consistently delivering the outcome that you're promising people. You need a way to do that consistently at scale. Otherwise, you don't really have a business. You're just a consultant. And so it took us probably about 18 months, maybe even as much as 2 years. I needed to be really, really hands-on as a founder, and be very, very involved in our product and kind of figure out what works, what doesn't work, really understand what our partners need from us, before getting to a point where we were able to actually increase the volume. So if you think of a business like a factory or like a sausage machine or something, we had to get to the point where we could actually increase the volume coming through so that the output coming out the other end could be where it needs to be. And my personality is like I prefer to have everything in place before scaling up, rather than like scaling up and potentially burning a bunch of relationships and like letting people down and that kind of thing. So that's how we've approached it. It's taken us about 18 months to 2 years in this business to find a true kind of product market fit. Like, this is what we do. This is who we do it for. This is how we deliver it. And yeah, now it's ready to kind of take things to the next level.
Amazing. Okay, let's get into some of the figures if we can. So as you said, we're like mid-February. Perhaps you can recap the January figures, and then how are we looking for the month of Feb so far?
Yeah, so it does take a few weeks, obviously, after the month to kind of close things out and figure out exactly where you were. So I'm just looking at our figures now. We spent just over £9,000. So that's probably something like $10,000, something like that. That booked us 31 sales calls, which I think is the most we've had in a month for a while. And that would make a cost per demo of just shy of £300, which is great. So £293 per demo. And then we had 7 new sales and generated about £63,000 worth of new revenue from that marketing spend. So we spent about £9,000 and generated about £63,000 of new revenue, which gives us in and around a 6 times return on the spend, which, we're very happy with. And I think the way that this will work as well is that we think towards the end of the quarter, we'll start to reap the rewards of some of the increases in ad spend. So for example, if we increase our marketing spend in January, that doesn't necessarily lead to new revenue in January. It probably leads to new revenue in February and March and so on and so forth. So that's what we're expecting here. But certainly good start. We're on track to basically, I think we're roughly on track to basically meet the goals that we have.
Amazing. So you said 31 sales calls, 9 were converted into sales. Do you think that any of those calls are still in the pipeline?
7 new sales.
7 new sales. Okay.
Yes. So again, sometimes people are not ready to move forward right away. There's a whole bunch of different reasons why they don't convert right away. The other thing to bear in mind as well is these are calls that were booked in January. So some of them will be held in February, or actually quite a lot of them will be held in February. So you can't really look at it on a month-by-month basis. It's much better to look at it on a quarterly or even like a 6-monthly basis, to be perfectly honest.
Okay, and then what is the quality of the calls been like and the quality of the leads that are coming in?
Yeah, this is one of the things that we love about our marketing system is it tends to generate really high-quality conversations. And so, I'm just thinking back, because I still conduct all of our sales calls at the moment. So I've actually conducted all of these conversations. So the vast majority of them actually happen. So that's the first blocker. A lot of businesses, they'll have maybe like a 60 or a 70% show up rate. So they book 10 calls and only 7 of the people show up, which is a huge waste of everyone's time and energy. So we have a very high show up rate. It's something like 90 to 95%, which is a good starting point. And then the calls have been very good. A lot of them are exactly our ICP. A lot of them already know who we are, what we do. They know our track record. And they kind of attend the calls sort of knowing a lot about us, which makes the likelihood of them wanting to move forward sooner much higher. And so I do just want to double click on something that we talked about last week, which was around the show up rate. I wasn't sure if we'd factored that into the calculations, and the good news is we had factored it in. So I know on average over the last 6 months, we closed something like 40% of the calls that we book, which means if you factor in the show up rate, the close rate of a call actually happening is more like 50%. So it's kind of like high 40s. So the close rates are very high. Yes, exactly. The close rates are very high. Which is a factor of A, the right people are attending the calls, and also B, they're pretty like pre-qualified before getting to us. They know about us, and they're kind of short sales cycle because they're ready to move forward typically.
That was actually my next question is, why do you think we have such a high show up and conversion rates? Like, what are the contributing factors that lead to such a high rate compared to a business, for example, that maybe is struggling with show ups or really low quality leads?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. I think it all comes back to the approach that we take trying to build demand rather than generate leads. I could probably, for the same marketing spend, get more meetings in the calendar and generate more leads, but it may not lead to more revenue overall. And I think this is where you really have to think of your marketing and growth as a business person and not as a marketing person. And I think this is where, if I can be blunt, a lot of people who are stuck in the marketing silo really get it wrong, because they're focusing on how can I generate as many MQLs as possible rather than how do I generate as much revenue as possible. And this obviously sounds similar, but it's actually quite a different approach. And so I think it's our approach to marketing, which means that people feel that they're making the decision themselves rather than us pushing them to be on a call. And that is the reality of the situation as well. So again, like I said, I'm still doing all of the calls. Just looking at my calendar now, tomorrow afternoon, I have 6 back-to-back consultations with people that want to potentially learn more about working with us. And so we're not trying to get loads more calls in the calendar. We already have plenty of calls in the calendar, and we're actually just optimizing for how do we get the right people to want to speak to us. So I think that the reason that the close rates are so high is that the quality of lead that comes from our sort of approach to marketing is very high.
Is there a time where you will stop doing the sales calls in the future? Is this something you're considering? Okay, that was a hard
100%. Yeah, I mean, look, again, it's the same thing. Like, it's not scalable for me as the founder to be doing all of the sales calls. And I think that time will come very, very soon, because I rather spend my time and attention working very closely with our partners, especially the sort of highest level of partner that we have. So I believe that time will come very soon where I'm no longer doing the sales calls. Yeah. But it's nice to hang on to it as long as we can, because it gives me a lot of insight that I can feed back into our marketing and our content.
Exactly. And also, I know that the team is a bit hesitant because you do have such a high close ratio, and we are nervous. But as you say, capacity means you can start bringing on more sales calls. So even if the conversion rate drops slightly, it should level out in the end.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, the reason... Sorry, I think we have a little bit of delay, probably the French Wi-Fi here. The reason that the close rates are so high is, as the founder, it's just that's always going to be the case. And so the reality is they've seen me in all the content, they know me a little bit already. That's why the conversions are high. But it's not, it gets to a certain point where it's irresponsible for me to be sitting on sales calls when there are maybe higher leverage things that I can do with my time. So I'm hanging on to it as long as possible because, to be honest, I really just enjoy having a lot of these conversations. It's like I just get to chat with business owners and help them grow their businesses, which is why I started this company, and it's what I love to do. But there will come a certain time where the next step will be to split the calls. So some of them go to me, some of them go to someone else. And then from there, probably I'll stop doing them. By the end of the year, I definitely won't be doing any sales calls.
I would also assume that you get quite a lot of value out of the sales calls, out of those conversations, especially when it comes to what kind of content you create.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a really, really good point. The insights from it are really, really valuable. So over the last couple of weeks, I've had a lot of people saying, I saw this one particular piece of content that you created and that really resonated with me. Or they'll say something like, I discovered you 6 months ago and then I've seen your content pop up over and over again over the last 6 months. Or they'll phrase something in a certain way that makes me think, that's interesting. I'm going to make a note of that and come back to that. And so this is the beauty of this kind of approach to marketing and finding market resonance, is that you use the data that you gather to improve your messaging and make that even more impactful. So in theory, you get this flywheel that spins faster and faster.
Amazing. Okay, so As you know, in the Building Public podcast, it's not all roses. We like to talk about some of the lessons that we've learned as well. So can you tell me, in the last couple of weeks with us setting this big goal for Q1, what have been some of the biggest lessons that you've learned?
Well, I think one thing, and this is just a really obvious point that I've had to relearn, is that the results are not instantaneous. So you can kind of, as a business owner, when you spend money on your marketing, you want to see results very quickly. And I can totally relate and understand to that. When you start spending a few £100 a day on ads or more, then you start to think, I need to get a return for this kind of as soon as possible. But it's been really helpful for us to zoom out and look more long-term at the data and actually just look at the data and let the data do the decision making. So that's definitely been something that I've noticed. And then probably another piece of the puzzle is to just continually keep experimenting as well and keep running tests and experiments to improve your process. This might be a little bit early to talk about, but I'll just mention it anyway. We're running an experiment at the moment, which I'm really curious about, which is that typically what we're trying to do on LinkedIn is we're trying to kind of raise awareness, and then we expect someone to come and visit our website, look at our case studies, check out some of our content, and so on and so forth. And so this is a bit like LinkedIn technical chat, but you can have a premium button on your profile, which basically is like a visit my website button. So they can click that and go to your website. And anytime you post, that button will be there. And especially when you're running thought leader ads, that button will be there as well. So previously, I've always thought we wanted to send people to the website. They then watch a sales letter or a video sales letter, and then they convert and they book in a call. But we're testing out at the moment, just having that button is just book a call. And I'm really curious to see the impact on results. The first sign is actually it's more effective overall in terms of booking calls, which is just hilarious, isn't it? That, maybe in the future we don't even need a website. It's just people learn about you from the social media platform. They book a consultation or they sign up for whatever they want to sign up for. And they don't even need to leave the platform to kind of make that decision. So we're early on. I don't have time to we're not ready to actually share the results of that experiment yet. But I'm curious to see where we get to.
Okay, so am I correct in saying you've currently changed your LinkedIn profile button from visit my website to book a call?
Yes, for the last 2 weeks or so. It just takes them to Calendly to book in a call with me.
Wow, that's amazing. And I know you're saying that it's very early to tell, but why do you feel like this is you're seeing positive results early on?
Well, in the first couple of weeks, our cost per book call is down. Okay. So it's costing us less to book a call. And if they remain high quality calls, like if we're not seeing a drop in quality and not seeing a drop in the close rate, then that's a sign that it's working.
Amazing. And then something you said earlier was about letting the data make the decisions for you. Okay, so what data are you using to help make these decisions? What are you looking at? What are the metrics?
Yeah, so our primary cost KPI is cost per demo. So how much does it cost for us to get a consultation in the calendar? And I've said this a million times, but it doesn't feel like a sales call. Technically, it's a demo call or a sales call. It really doesn't feel like that with the approach that we take to marketing. It really feels like a consultation. So I'm taking an hour out of my day to really understand the business that I speak to and give them advice on how I would grow their business if I was their chief marketing officer or their chief growth officer. And then ultimately, if they want our help to implement that, then we can talk about it. But it really doesn't feel like a hard sell in any way, which again, for my style and my personality, that suits me really well. I prefer that. And the main metric we're looking at, to come back to your question, is cost per demo. So how much does it cost for us to get one of those in the calendar? Knowing that if we book one, we close them at about 40%, which means from the show up rate, it's something like 45, maybe even 50% of those turn into some sort of paid work for us, which we were kind of talking about this before the call. Arguably, that's too high. And I actually wonder, like, if I was consulting our business, I might be saying, actually, your price point is too low. You need to charge more. 50%. It's great to have a 50% close rate, but that maybe is a sign that you're not charging enough for the initial piece of work that you're doing.
Well, that's a really interesting thought. Not charging enough. Awesome. Thanks so much for your time today, David, and we'll see you next week. Enjoy the slope.
Thank you so much. I will.